accessibility or something like that.
Yep. Hello and welcome to the third in our Technology for the Safe System webinar series organised by RoadSafe to explore how connected technologies can contribute to each of the pillars of the safe system approach to road safety. My name is Nick Reed and I'm your host for the series. I work in transport technology and road safety through my company Reed Mobility and as Chief Road Safety Advisor to National Highways. I'm also a trustee of RoadSafe, a charitable organisation that brings together government, industry and research organisations to foster collaboration on road safety topics. We're very grateful to Bosch for their support of this webinar series and to Agilysys for their technical and logistical expertise in arranging these sessions. In our previous two webinars, we've looked at the contribution of technology to achieving safe road infrastructure, hosted by National Highways at the National Transport Operations Centre, and at the use of technology to improve post-crash care, hosted at Northwest Fire Control in Warrington, and those sessions are available online. I'm excited to say that our third episode in the series will be discussing the role of technology in delivering safe vehicles, and continuing the theme of hosting each webinar at a location relevant to the discussion, we are today being very kindly hosted by Thatcham Research at their Upper Heyford Test Track facility. Thatcham Research is, of course, the insurer-funded, not-for-profit research centre dedicated to improving vehicle safety, security and repair processes. Founded in 1969, it is now highly influential in the Euro NCAP crash testing protocol, and as I'm sure we'll hear later, their work now encompasses not just making vehicles safe in crashes, but testing technologies that can help them avoid crashes in the first place, prevention being better than the cure. We're coming to you from the repurposed airfield at Upper Heyford. Once host to American strategic bombers, it is now used for a range of purposes related to road safety and vehicle testing. And joining me here are four fantastic panellists to discuss how connected technologies are helping to improve vehicle safety. But before we meet them, we've made a short film this morning to highlight some of the fascinating ways that Thatcham are working in this area.
For environmental sensing, a lot of cars use cameras. This is a good example. We see behind the windshield here 3 cameras. That's giving a wide angle view and a long range view. And the vehicle's also got cameras fitted to the side of the vehicle here and unusually on the B pillar here. This gives all-round vision and really helps this vehicle to deliver outstanding collision avoidance characteristics. Many cars have got radars in the rear corner of the vehicle, and this is for what we call blind spot monitoring. It can sense a vehicle next to the vehicle and prevent you driving into it. This system is also used in what we call cross traffic alert. That can prevent the vehicle reversing into a stream of traffic. This vehicle's fitted with 2 cameras working in stereo. That gives the vehicle better image perception and also depth perception. That allows it to identify more vehicles earlier. It's also fitted with a very innovative driver monitoring system. It uses a camera here to look at the driver, and if the driver's inattentive, will warn the driver to watch the road ahead. So the system can pick up when I'm distracted and can also pick up if I'm going to sleep. One of the most significant technologies cars have got now is automatic emergency braking. This uses the radar, or in this instance the camera, to identify a vehicle in front, and the car will warn you to come back into the loop because you're best at avoiding a collision. But if you don't respond quickly enough, the vehicle will automatically brake and hopefully prevent a collision. Here we don't have self-driving cars yet, but many vehicles use the camera and radar in combination into what we call assisted driving functions. This uses the radar to keep a safe distance between the car, your car and the car in front, and also supports the driver with the steering. So here I've got my feet off the pedals, I've got my hands off the wheel, and the vehicle is supporting with the steering.
Okay, so we now move into the discussion and welcome our expert panelists, and I should highlight at this stage that you have the opportunity to ask your questions to this panel by using the chat function in the webinar, and in the last 10 minutes or so we'll pick up on some of those questions and direct them to our panelists. But let's meet them first. So first, Matthew, tell us something about your role and Thatcham Research.
Well, good afternoon, Nick. Well, welcome to Thatcham Research and our Upper Hayford facility. I'm the strategic research director at Thatcham, and my role is really focused on the new vehicle technology. I also am a board member for Euro NCAP, so a lot of my role is based on influencing future vehicle design. And probably one of the key things that we're doing within Euro NCAP at the moment is working on our next generation, so what we call our roadmap for 2030, and that's looking at lots of exciting new technologies. It's because of Euro NCAP we've seen such a big proliferation of the ADAS technology fitted to the vehicle that the video explained. So Euro NCAP as a consumer rating program is hugely influential in increasing the safety on our vehicles.
Brilliant, thank you, Matthew. And Steve, tell us about Motion Data.
Hi, thank you, Nick. I'm Steve Boyle from Motion Data, and Motion Data is a company that manufactures products aimed to help the automotive industry test and develop ADAS technologies. So things like the fake cars, the fake pedestrians, fake curbs, roundabout buildings, infrastructure that we can use to develop these sensors to find the technology. I've been working in ADAS testing since 2005, so I've had a lot of experience in that right from the early days of ADAS and how we can use the technology, develop the technology by using outside technologies, really.
Brilliant, thanks Steve. And Karen, we're not just interested in cars or trucks, we also wanted to think about safe vehicles in the form of two-wheelers. So tell us about the Motorcycle Industry Association.
Oh yes, thank you very much. It's really nice to be included. Two-wheelers are often missed out on this type of technology, so it's very interesting to be here. I'm a trustee of RoadSafe along with Nick, but I'm also Director of Safety and Training for MCIA, which is the trade association that we look after 2-, 3 and 4-wheel vehicles, the powered light variety, so electric and petrol at the moment, but with an emphasis on technology moving forward. So thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, Karen. And finally, Raj from Bosch.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So I'm part of the Bosch Mobility Group, or Bosch Mobility Solutions Group, and within that we have a sector that's responsible for these technologies, ADAS in particular, among other things. But within that scope, we develop the systems right from a hardware level, the enabling software, the operating system, and then the functions that you experience as Matthew was demonstrating on the vehicle there. The functions then enable these safety features and also some comfort features.
Absolutely. Right, so we've got some questions for you all. Hopefully to provoke some interesting discussion, and feel free to chip into everyone else's questions. But if I come to you first, Matthew, we've heard Thatcham works on behalf of the insurance industry to help improve road safety, including that role with Euro NCAP. So on that Euro NCAP roadmap, what are the features that are really going to move the needle on road safety in the next 5 years?
Well, probably the video there hinted at probably one of the most important ones, which is what we call OSM. We've got lots of acronyms. That's Occupant Status Monitoring. So that's new technology being fitted to some of our vehicles now. Uses an infrared camera. It's not recording images, but effectively it's recording and it's monitoring where your head is relative to driving position, whether your eyes are open, closed, whether you're looking. So for distracted driving, it's absolutely fantastic technology to address some of the problems that we've got, on our roads today. So it won't just sense if you're sleepy, it won't just sense if you're distracted. It can see that you're using a handheld mobile phone and tell you very, very promptly to put the phone down. It can also sense that, even when you are intoxicated, and the technology is really, really developing, and we're already seeing the sort of next generation of those systems that can even, believe it or not, look at cognitive load to see whether you're actually understanding what's going on around you. Why is this technology so important? Well, a huge amount of our collisions are down to human error, so keeping the driver engaged in the driving task is really, really important. But also, a lot of the systems we've got on cars today, drivers sometimes find they're annoying, they're nagging because they're using fairly binary systems. You've crossed over a white line, but they're not actually understanding whether it's unsafe for you to cross over the white line. So by combining the sensors, like the Bosch sensors you've got in your vehicle, by combining the operations of those sensors, it can see whether you can cross a white line, whether you're noticing whether you're crossing a white line, and whether there's a threat to you crossing that white line. So by combining all of that functionality together, you can make a much more seamless system. Because really what we want, successful ADAS, successful driver assistance systems, are the ones that you don't notice, because then they won't really be, people won't feel they have to turn them off because they're being nagged to do things.
Yeah.
So the seamless operation is so important. So for me, that's the best bet.
And the reliability of those systems, the occupant monitoring systems, if you're wearing a hat or sunglasses, are they starting to get the durability, the reliability to the differences between individual drivers difference between individuals, but differences from day to day of a single individual?
Yes, and we're beginning to test those within Euro NCAP, and we've got various sort of gazes where we're sort of looking down and emulating being asleep or looking to one side. So we have various tests that we run. We talk about the lizard gaze and the owl gaze. I won't go into details about that, but that's all part and parcel of what we do. And yes, they're getting much more reliable. And we've got the first generation systems, and we showed a Subaru on the video today, but already we're seeing new systems coming in from several manufacturers that are really going to be the next generation of those systems. And it's a very, very important part of the whole future of automated driving, because it needs to know that you're ready to take back control, and obviously driver monitoring systems are central to that. But it's not just in automated driving, it's everyday manual driving where these systems can really, really deliver benefits. So it's one to watch.
Fantastic. Steve, you mentioned a little bit about the work that Motion does, the providing of this test equipment. So in your work testing different types of ADAS system, what are the things you think are really going to make the difference in terms of delivering safer vehicles?
I think one of the biggest things we need to look at is, as we go through the phases of NCAP and development of the technology, that we bring everybody along with it, so that there's a big cohesion was a word I had in my mind, but I couldn't think of a better word at the time. Is that as we move forward, a lot of people in different organisations worldwide have got lots of different aims, or the same aim really, to make safer roads, but a lot of different paths about doing it.
Yeah.
And that the biggest thing I've come across in my time doing ADAS testing is people understanding how to use it and knowing it. And at whichever level, never mind obviously at the advanced level that Matthew was just talking about. So I think the part of it is to get everybody to bring it all together, right from policymakers, right from driving instructors, right through drivers, sales, the whole industry, needs to benefit and know that technology, because without it, it's almost pointless doing it if no one's following the path.
Right.
So when Matthew said about trying to keep everybody engaged in it, the education of them is engaged, understanding it and using it and want to have it on their car is the biggest thing, because the cars are getting fantastically safe now. But there's still a lot of accidents, and part of it, we don't want people to switch this technology off.
Yeah.
We want to engage with it and use it.
Use it in the right way. Exactly. Well, I mean, Karen, one of the most exciting, attractive things about motorcycling is the rawness of the experience and the excitement, but that comes with its own risks. So what are the steps that are happening in the motorcycle industry to make that safer without spoiling this key selling point?
Yeah, I think it's very important. Obviously, the riders of motorcycles enjoy being in charge of their machine, and they certainly don't want anything taking over their riding for them. So, as we were saying, it's important that it doesn't interfere, but it complements, and people accept it for what it is. And we find, looking back, that more and more technologies that have been seen in cars are now becoming available for bikes, where it was just pretty much limited to ABS. We now have advanced rider assistance systems as well, which use radar in the same way as the advanced driver systems, so the cars and the bikes can speak to each other. The added benefit of the rider assistance systems is for seeing behind the riders. There's nothing worse than being sat waiting in a queue of traffic to find yourself flying through the air because somebody's come up behind you. AVRAS gives us the opportunity for riders to be warned about that and have the chance to take avoiding action. So there's things also like advanced stability systems to help riders when they're braking with a lean, and to ensure that both wheels stay firmly planted on the ground and don't lose traction. So there's lots and lots of exciting things happening in our industry, and Bosch have obviously been quite leaders in a lot of this. So yeah.
And are there things that you think would be useful to see on cars and larger vehicles to make their interactions with motorcycles safer?
I think that the biggest problem at the moment is that there is no doubt that, in fact, there was some research published in August this month by the Collective Motorcycle Consortium, and there is no doubt that the systems are slower to react to motorcycles, whether they're being masked by a larger vehicle or whether it's just our road positioning, because for view we use the road and we are very narrow and very thin, and whilst it does pick us up generally, it can take longer, and that's cause for concern for us. Euro NCAP is going to cover motorcycles and their interactions with cars, but not until 2023. And as an industry, we're a bit concerned about testing on motorways of these cars, while we're the only vulnerable road users using motorways, and the delay at a very fast speed is more crucial than at a slower one. So we have worries, but we know people are out there working on it, but motorcycles are still a little bit behind and are not quite as obvious as your car and your bus and your van.
And just following up on that, Matthew, is that something you're seeing in terms of the way the protocols are changing to be more aware of different types of vulnerable road users?
Yes, I mean, when we started this path in 2014 at this various facility developing the AEB test facilities, we were working on car-to-cars, and if we were seeing vehicles avoid collisions or avoid up to sort of 20-30 miles an hour, we were very impressed with that. We will now see AEB systems that can avoid a stationary vehicle up to 40-50 miles an hour. So the system performance has got better and better and better in a very short space of time. For the average owner, sort of one generation of vehicle has gone on hugely. In 2016 we started looking at pedestrians. We added pedestrian testing. 2018 we added cyclists into that. So we've added more and more complexity as manufacturers like Bosch have expanded the capability of the systems. So we're just reflecting what the vehicle manufacturers are offering. And you're right, in next year, it's probably just 3 months now, we're introducing motorcycle testing. So we've got dummy units from people like Motion that have got the dummy targets that we can use to emulate a motorcycle, and we can obviously safely test them. What we're trying to do is encourage all vehicle manufacturers to produce sensor systems on the vehicle that can sense every sort of road user, from a full-size 44-ton truck to someone on an e-scooter. And all of these have very, very different characteristics, different dynamics. And I'm sure Bosch will tell you it's very, very difficult to program their system to, identify all of those. But it's the best manufacturers that we want to give credit to enable the consumer to identify what is the safest car and enable them to make an informed choice.
Perfect. Raj, Bosch has been referenced several times already, well known for its technologies that support road safety, the ABSs, the ESPs, the AEBs.
Yeah.
We're now moving to the next generation, the intelligent, the connected safety systems. So, what can you tell us about those?
I think it's worthwhile to reflect on an observation. The observation is that if you look at the last decade, you look at the proliferation of the vehicle systems that we have, the systems that we have in vehicles for keeping drivers, occupants, and pedestrians and vulnerable road users safe, has really increased. So in most cars, you're already seeing radars, you're already seeing forward vision cameras, you're starting to see a high proliferation of surround view cameras as well as ultrasonic sensors, and then you're going to start seeing some other proliferation for LiDARs and other sensors like that. So what that means is that we've now got a new baseline where the technology is embedded in the car. So all new cars have got the embedded technology. The next generation that we're seeing now is, okay, what other features can we improve? What features can we improve? And what technology can we use to then enhance the existing capabilities of the car? And the great part of that is now the cloud. How do we use the cloud? Connectivity. So how do we use connected-based solutions to enhance existing cars? And let me give you an example. Today we can get swarm data of vehicles that are driving around the streets. We can collect, with permission of the OEMs naturally, and with consumer data fully protected, but we can collect data and start collecting real-time information, what's happening in a particular street or a road at any time of the day, be it weather condition based, be it road hazard based, be it whatever it may be. But we can collect this information. And what we can do with that information is then send this back up to a cloud and then create, let's say in a very simple terms, another layer of a map. If you can imagine, we've got static maps at the moment, like your Waze, whatever map service that you're using, you've got a static map, which will give you the direction, maybe some usage data about where traffic congestion is. But if I'm also collecting information about friction levels on the ground, if I'm collecting information about an accident that might have happened, as emergency services are around there, I can start adding some extra layers. And if I can then add those layers onto the map, I can then feed that back to drivers in real time. And when you start feeding back information to drivers in real time, you then are able then to close the gap that we see. We talked about road deaths reducing over many, many years, but also plateauing over the last decade or so. So what's going to be the incremental, then it's going to bring that further down. So I see connectivity, connected-based solutions, connected map services as an incremental part for this. One specific example, just to put it into context. Wrong-way driver warning. I think we had a case recently in the UK where someone entering into a motorway or a road the wrong way resulted in some deaths. In the last year, in 2021, with the system that we've now established, we were able to detect in Europe, across Europe, 1.6 billion driver directions to confirm which direction the car was going, on a motorway and a highway. From that 1.6 billion, we detected 300 wrong-way drivers, and we were able then to inform a further 3,000 drivers that could be affected by that wrong-way driver. And then from all those detections, there was 0 accidents. Not even 0 deaths, 0 accidents. So it's proven technology that we can use connectivity to add an extra layer. It doesn't negate what we're doing already. What it's doing is just enhancing. And we've got to think about ways we create technology that is enhancing and not technology for the sake of technology. And that's one example, and there's many more that I think you can do through connectivity.
One thing to add to that, Nick, Behind us we've got two of the latest generation of EVs, and one standout feature for both of them is they're both capable of taking over-the-air updates. That's a major step forward. So in other words, the vehicle you drove on the Friday is not the same vehicle you drive on the Monday, because the technology and the connectivity has and the capability has been upgraded significantly. And that's a real safety boom, because it means that vehicle manufacturers, if they notice problems, or for instance they've got new capabilities with the software, they can now see motorcycles. Everybody's vehicle, every single vehicle in the fleet that's got that capability can be upgraded overnight. What we've had up till now is the vehicle leaves the dealership, that's the end of the development of that. We've now got, with these two cars, they get better as you drive them. That is a fantastic update and a fantastic development.
It really is, and yeah, that ability to make progress in a vehicle that you've already bought and owned and it continues to develop, it really does make a difference. Raj mentioned the decade of action and things plateauing, certainly in the West, through that period in terms of fatalities on the road. Why is that, do you think, Matthew? Is it something to do with the size of vehicles? Is it something to do with distraction? What's your sense?
Well, I think where we are, I think we've not yet seen the full extent of the impact of the ADAS systems. I mean, we started seeing some vehicles with ADAS in 2014, and now, in 2020, 2022, every vehicle we're testing in Euro NCAP has got a very capable ADAS system. So I think it's going to take some years before, in sort of Europe, we really see the benefits of this technology. But you're right, we are seeing more fatalities now, or certainly a flatlining of them, and therefore we need to see the development of these technologies. And new vehicles like we see behind us with this next generation of ADAS sensors and that connectivity that Raj was talking about, plus things like the over-the-air updates, I think we're going to see vehicles continue to drive the reduction in road fatalities.
Yeah, 50% by 2030 is the aim.
That's
isn't
what
it?
we're striving for,
Yeah.
and manufacturers like Bosch and these manufacturers behind us, I think we can get there.
Steve, I mean, you've hosted some amazing demonstrator events here at Upper Hayford, and indeed I've attended one myself. Not wanting to give you a free commercial, but what do you see as the value in those kind of events?
Well, as you said, you attended one of our events where we allowed people to get on the test track, drive one of these cars, just slow, 15 miles per hour at a static target, and it stopped. And to experience that is, when you've never had an experience before, people like Matthew have been doing it for many years, and it's just off the cuff now. But when you first experience that, you think, wow, this is amazing. I didn't have to touch the pedals, I didn't have to do anything. And I've done countless amounts of these demonstrations. I know I possibly even sold 4 or 5 Volvos on the back of doing these demonstrations, because I use a Volvo myself. But what has surprised me about this, that event we did there, we did 2 subsequent ones since this, is the level of people that don't understand it or haven't experienced it. Which you can imagine, people like my father, who's in his 70s and was buying a new car, doesn't know the technology. But this was police drivers, fire engine drivers, a lot of people from the highways agency, local authorities, policy decision makers. And you think, well, if they haven't experienced it, how does the average Joe public going to have this knowledge? And we're making decisions based on that. So I think those type of days, those type of events are invaluable to get people to buy into it. And a lot of people have demonstrated it to and had a go, have went, yeah, I really believe in this now, and more likely to go buy that on the next car and specify that as an option, or make sure they understand it and learn about it or read about it, which is going to be a good thing.
And I think it's not just what does it mean for me as an individual driver, but what could this technology mean for the transport system, for the road network? Having that understanding is important.
Let's rearrange shunts on the M1, then we're going to all move up the M1 quicker.
Yep.
So it's a net benefit. The ripple effect on the M1 is proved by ACC, reduces that ripple effect when you see the cars all slowing down at overspeed. That technology on ACC cuts that down, because the cars only slow as much as the car in front. They don't overslow. So it will have a net benefit to us all for mobility around the country by having less crashes at traffic lights, less crashes at less rubberneck crashes that we get on the highways by the car wall crashing to the front wheel in front.
Yeah.
But people have got to understand it and adopt it. The more people we can tell, show and experience it, the better it's going to be.
And Raj, we talked there about the over-the-air updates. And that's all very well if you've got one of the latest vehicles. Are there ways in which technology can help people who haven't got the latest vehicle, even through smartphone?
I think so. We're already seeing that. The example I gave for one-way driver warning, we've got native embedded apps in vehicles. What I mean by that is that, you know, they've been built into the OEM's vehicle manufacturers' cars that comes off the production line. But we've also got app-based services as well. And there are other technologies which you can use through the mobile. As long as you've got connectivity, you've got to question the stability of the connectivity, you've got to question how much data you're exchanging, and if you can keep the packet sizes small and the data exchange very, very small, and you're sending signals, then we can do that as well. You've got to be able to connect into certain signals that are coming off the vehicle, maybe public signals, especially in the aftermarket. You've got to have access to the public signals, not only the private signals which are driven by the vehicle manufacturers. So I think there are ways that we can use mobile devices. But if I may just come back to the point that was mentioned here about the why is it important to have these demonstrations? There's two bits here. I think there's two pieces. There's the piece where we as an industry have a huge responsibility not only to introduce these systems, make them available, but to make them intuitive. Yeah, so they've got to be really intuitive so that anyone that gets into a car knows what it's doing and is not panicked or shocked or discerned in any way to actually use the system itself. So we've got that responsibility on one hand. The other piece is education piece, such that when you go do your driving lessons. Well, I remember taking my driving lessons I won't say how long ago, but it was a long time ago. The manoeuvres that we were doing then for our driving lessons are not that much different to what I'm hearing from, you know, family, niece and nephew that are taking their driving tests now. But the technology has moved on significantly. So I think there's be some education piece about when people are first getting into their cars. There's a technology in the communication piece also when people purchase. How can we help that user experience? How can we engage with the set point of sale to engage them? And then come back to connectivity. How can we then use the connectivity to inform the driver about what's available in the car at the time? And that can be also done remotely. So you're not always in the vehicle. This could be done through many different means. So there's a lot that can be done with connectivity, but there's a lot more that we have to do just on the education piece, I think.
I can certainly see that point. You know, you're talking about Friday to Monday. You pass your test on the Friday, and then you start your job as a sales executive in one of these nice vehicles behind us. It's a very different driving task that you're faced with in these vehicles, and people have to be aware and capable and exploit the benefits that the safety technologies bring. I mean, Karen, do you think we're over-emphasising the role of technology? Is there something that might be lost in terms of driver or rider skill with all these technology systems coming onto the vehicles?
Yeah, I think it's very easy to forget that the majority of the road users will not have access to this technology all the time as well. And you know, you hear about there's some wonderful advances here on distraction particularly. I mean, there's a lot of injuries to riders caused by driver distraction. But if people get used to driving those vehicles for their day job, perhaps delivering or driving around, you know, as a company driver with all that distraction technology in there, and they go home in their car that doesn't have it, you know, I think it's very much the education piece again. It's educating about the technology, not forgetting that it's going to be an awful long time before we all use cars with this sort of technology in routinely. And so get the benefits of technology where it does exist. But I just am concerned that we'll put too many eggs in one basket in the interim where we're seeing both.
While the technology is rolling out. It's very interesting that this is a safe vehicles panel, but we've talked a lot about the road user, the driver, and from a human factors perspective, which is my background, that's always very interesting. Steve, I mean, you've suggested that the government should maybe be focusing more of its efforts towards the more proven technologies than on the more perhaps distant, fully automated vehicles. Could you tell us about that perspective that you have?
Yes, I wrote an article, and it was basically entitled, "Why is the government spending millions on autonomous vehicles and nothing to protect my son?" And the theory behind it, or the story behind it, is, as a manufacturer of these crash targets, or crash avoidance targets, should I say, we were making the child dummy for NCAP and ISO standard is 110 centimetres, which a year and a half ago when we were developing this, or testing it, is the same height as my 8-year-old son. So we utilised my 8-year-old son to get radar readings off him in comparison, and data readings off him as a comparison. It made you think, as a father, that I'm making an object to help these cars to prevent running over 8-year-old boys, and my son is 8-year-old. And with all the best will in the world, I tried to teach him about the highway code and to look, and there is a lot less happening in school about him being learned about crossing the road. But NCAP and Matthew, since 2016, he said, have brought in these tests to stop and won't run over a child. But no one seems to know that technology exists. And these cars have got this, and NCAP's world, and Matthew and Thatcher have been developing this out there, but the government's given millions to a fantasy of a car to deliver an Ocado vehicle, but not educating people that you can buy a car that won't run over my son. So that was just trying to get that point across. There is this technology here available now that, yes, it's on the step up towards the nirvana of autonomous driverless cars and level 4, level 5 cars. But let's make the use of it. Let's understand it. Let's be there. Why run over children? Don't just rely on people having it and it just been fitted because they bought the car.
Yes.
It's they've gone out to buy that car with it fitted because they don't want to run out children.
I think Steve makes a very important point there about driver education, that consumers are completely bamboozled by all of this technology. And, we've got so many acronyms for all the different technologies we've used a lot here, AEB, LSS, LKA and everything. And, just on AEB, autonomous emergency braking, a recent study we looked at had 62 different names for AEB system. So if you're checking whether your vehicle's got that, unless you've got 1 or 2 brands of vehicle, you won't have it. Well, you will have it, but it will be called something different. So if you're shopping for a vehicle that's got AEB, chances are most vehicles you look at won't appear to have it. You've got to look in the fine print on autonomous emergency braking. And this gets more and more complicated as we moved into assisted driving technology. Both of these vehicles have got technology which support the driver constantly. We showed it, in one of the videos, and it's supporting the driver as you drive with steering and braking combined, what we call level 2 assisted driving technology. But a lot of manufacturers are calling it not assisted driving, but they're calling it different things like autopilot or pilot, pro-pilot, and these are probably confusing terms, and people are thinking, what does this mean? Does this mean my car's going to be able to drive itself? And we did a recent survey that was showing that sort of 70% of people believe you can buy a self-driving car in the UK today. You can't. And that's because there are so many different vehicles, so much technology, consumers don't know. So I believe it's down to the government. Insurers have got their part to play, but I think principally the government should be there educating people, just as Steve was saying about this is what you should have, this does this and this does that. Because if we allow vehicle manufacturers to just call things whatever they like, I think there is a risk of confusion, and that confusion could in extreme situations end up in being a crash or a death.
So you must have been very pleased to see the Law Commission's recommendation. So the Law Commission of Great Britain has produced recommendations on regulations around automated vehicles, and one of those recommendations was around that clear distinction between what is automated and what is assisted driving. You must have been pleased to yes, see that distinction.
I think probably we helped them make that decision.
I'm sure you did.
Yes, but it's absolutely right, and it's something that people recognise, and it's supremely important as we begin to hand over control to the vehicle and people are confident with it. Some people won't like it, but some people will be overconfident with it, and it's so important
that the technology is working, in tandem with the consumer, the driver, but also that consumers, the drivers, understand their obligations. Can I use a cell phone? Can I read a paper? Can I go to sleep? Do I have to keep watching? What can I do? What can't I do? And in this transition period, it's super important that that education is out there, and it's a common education from every manufacturer and every source.
Yeah, absolutely. Raj, in Matthew's earlier answer, he talked about how the ADAS systems that we have today work almost without driver awareness. They work in the background. But as we're coming to these more advanced systems, do you think there'll be a temptation for drivers to sort of game the system, that they might be able to do things, as Matthew's suggesting, that they do things that they wouldn't otherwise have done? It's okay just to check that WhatsApp message. It's okay just to check a quick email because I know I've got this autonomous emergency braking system. Is there some risk around that behavioural adaptation piece?
Absolutely. I mean, humans are humans, right? We're all humans, and if we can find a way to do things easily or multitask or make our lives easier, we'll take advantage of that. I think we've seen examples of that already happening on some vehicle marques where, back to what Matthew has said, the naming convention of what it does has maybe confused people to think that they can do more than the car can actually do. Or some that have actually tried to game it, as you say, because in one instance it's testing, it's fun, people put up on YouTube, and that could get proliferated. But I think Matthew also brought up the point earlier is that there's legislation coming in around occupant monitoring, driver monitoring. It's becoming legislative here in Europe at least. But if you look at that technology, it also needs to advance beyond the distraction of the gaze. It needs to be more looking at what's happening with the person, the body movement. Are they under some sort of stress? Cognitive, I think even Matthew referred to that. We have technology now that can look at cognitive performance. So we're going to have to start looking at more about what's going on with the driver. If we want to enable these technologies, we're going to have to ensure that we also put those safety mechanisms in place to make sure, that it can't always be gamed into I don't think you can ever eliminate the chance of a consumer or driver gaming the vehicle. Drivers today game the speed limit every day. Yeah. So you're not going to be able to factor in for every use case, but there needs to be a concerted effort to make sure that if you're going to offer the systems into the market, there is some sort of safety mechanism to ensure that we keep the drivers safe, keep the occupants safe, we keep the passengers safe, vulnerable road users. I can imagine exactly what Karen's coming from. This point is like, if you're distracted on your phone, you're not seeing a motorcycle come up on you inside, then that's super dangerous. So we've got to be absolutely aware of that.
Yeah, and for me, this whole discussion is reinforcing the importance of thinking of this as a safe system. You can't just look at the pillars in isolation. Although we're doing that over the course of this webinar series, I think what I'm really appreciating is how all the elements link together. Raj mentioned regulation there, Steve, and I know you've talked in the past about the importance of the general safety regulation, some of the European legislation that's coming out. Can you tell us a bit about the impact of that legislation?
Yes, well, this type of technology is developed mainly by the manufacturers with the help and guidance of people like Matthew and NCAP. And as it progresses forward, and it's looked at by the UN and the Commission in there, and they pick out things like the safety regulations. I think it's going to improve safety. And they look to make that mandatory fitment in all cars. So every so often there's a group of global safety regulations coming out that cars now have to have this. So recently, July this year, there was a new set of global safety regulations. And so safeties like ISA, Intelligent Speed Assist, which is using data and maps to road signs to measure your speed and work with this technology, keep the speed correct for the environment, is now implemented in the UN safety regulations. But now the UK is not in the EU, we have not signed up to this. And currently we're still not signed up to adopt these safety regulations. And the UK has been at the forefront of developing all this technology. Thatcher, myself, and a lot of other companies in the UK, and a lot of organisations have driven this technology, and now we're not adopting ourselves. And PACS have a study out to show that this will be beneficial. There's 15 new technologies it should be adopted. It's beneficial to the tune of £7 billion for the economy, but more so save up to over 1,700 lives in the next 10 to 15 years, and further 15,000 injuries of people. So it's important that we do adopt these technologies as they're going forward and not just leave them to the manufacturers to decide when to have them. One counter argument I had from this was someone said to me, they're not going to make cars different for Europe as they are for the UK, which I came back with they already do, because if no one's noticed, if the steering wheel's on one side in the UK, it's on this side in Europe. So when you've got a production line like this side up in Sunderland, the cars that come down will have the left-hand steering wheel, can have the radars and all the technology, and the cars that don't have the steering wheel on the left-hand side, have it on our side, it doesn't have to have all this technology because it's not legislated. And you think, well, would the manufacturers do that? But in this environment where there's shortage of chips, and this is a chip-heavy technology, and Matthew alluded to this, and I think Ford made it. Was it Ford that did it with a bit of Focus, a lighter version, to keep selling cars without all this technology on it? And they can still charge the same price because they don't have to have that legislation. I'm sure they'd save a few £100 on a radar here and a camera there and a camera here, and get the cars off the production line. So it's something I think we need to sign up to and embrace.
And presumably, Matthew, this is a question that will be quite high up in the in-tray of the new administration that's come in over the last few weeks.
Well, absolutely, and obviously we're pushing the government to, encourage them to adopt GSR2 or the aspects of GSR2, and we're certainly hopeful. And as Steve was saying, Euro NCAP was actually, a construct, invented in the UK in the mid 1990s, and we've led the development of this. And it would be tragic if we took our foot off the gas. Is a UK life worth less than a European life? I ask you.
Yeah, that's a powerful way to frame it. Karen, in your introduction, you talked about kind of the breadth of what the MCIA represent in the form of your members. And of course, we've seen a wide proliferation of new vehicle types over the last 5 years, the e-scooters, e-skateboards and so on. These are beneficial in terms of offering low carbon mobility. But how should we be thinking about these vehicles in terms of safety?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And the government published their decarbonisation strategy, and they asked MCIA to write a strategy, and we've developed an action plan with Zemo. And we've looked at this problem. I mentioned the e-scooters there in particular. I think anything that's going to be classed as a road vehicle needs to come under the same sort of safety regulations as the smaller motorcycles do. We have L category categories in this country, the same as they do in Europe, and we have standards that they have to meet. I'm sure anybody riding on the roads on a mechanically propelled vehicle should be subject to the same thing. We're seeing in the hurry to decarbonise, we're seeing a lot of inferior quality product, both from a safety perspective and a durability perspective. And I think it's very important that all of these vehicles that are intended as road vehicles and can be used on the road come under the same robust legislation. It's also important, and it was really heartening to hear Thatcher was saying that you'll be including e-scooters when they're looking out for all types of vehicles. The problem is these vehicles are evolving all the time. Some of our members are making very interestingly shaped 3 and 4 wheel vehicles that don't look like a motorcycle rectangle and don't look like a bicycle and don't look like an e-scooter either. So I think the challenge will be on everybody really to keep up with technology as it evolves and to make sure that these vehicles are manufactured in a safe way but are also catered for in the systems that are in other larger vehicles. So
I guess that reinforces the point again about the over-the-air updates. So if we're seeing a new type of vehicle, maybe the software can be updated to allow or ensure that the sensors are able to detect new vehicle types.
These vehicles are lighter and smaller, so they won't have you know, all the pillars and the protection that you have in a car,
Yes.
arguably more than you'll have on a motorcycle, but everything's relative. But it's really important to make sure that they are, and the over-air updates certainly give a good indication that in the future that will be more possible.
I think we have to be
Go ahead.
careful of the over-air update as well, especially in the world of, I think it was Tesla, that you can buy a feature and it's sent to you with no training, no understanding of how that feature works. And we're talking about education and understanding that feature. You don't have to go to the showroom and sit and watch a video or read the manual about it. As you said, you get the over-air update where it improves the original technology, that now it detects a three-wheel bike as well as a two-wheel bike. But I think we have to be careful that we're not putting a whole new feature on there. And the driver gets a warning when it's downloaded and said, "You've got this new technology, does this?" "Yeah, but I'm in a hurry, I'll read about that later." Doesn't know, and then doesn't understand what it is and tries to use it. And it's just, he didn't buy it, he didn't ask for it, it's just turned up on his car. If it's an enhancement of existing, brilliant. But I think we have to be careful that people don't just say, "You can order this over the phone now and get it activated over the weekend," with no
Process.
training, with no knowledge and understanding
Yeah.
of, now you can take your hands off the car because we've changed the rule and you don't have to drive your hands in. Great, I get in the back. And so,
We need some guardrails
Yes,
around that
yeah.
upgrade process.
yeah, you should go into the dealer and understand that, shouldn't you?
Yeah.
To be taught about that before, when you can go in the back or not. When you can get your WhatsApp message or...
But I do think we've got to distinguish between what we mean by over the air.
Yeah.
You know, we've got your functional updates that are needed to
Yeah.
call it bug fix. Yeah, things that you would normally go into the dealer to get repaired in the service, but can be done over the air. Yeah, and that's these could be safety relevant features. These could be functional improvements, whatever they are. These are improvements that need to happen in the background. Doesn't need to have the driver intervention. The other things that we're talking about here are upgrades, where the vehicle manufacturers also want to have a business model around selling features. And you've got to get your arms around what that is. Are these features comfort features? Yeah, are then therefore maybe not subject to certain safety regulations about how you then release those features? Or they really sit in a safety domain? If they're in a safety domain, then you definitely got to get your arms around that really tightly, and not only in the vehicle, within the whole system, ecosystem, as you were saying there, Nick. We've also got to remember the other benefits of having the over-the-air as well. We're thinking about circular economy. If we can enable these cars to actually do more for longer, because we're updating them over time, we don't have finite resources. So we have to try and make our resources go a lot longer. And if we're going to get into circular economy, having this ability to do over-the-air updates to bring the vehicle up to, let's say, the latest level of technology for functions, but also safety, it's going to be imperative. We're going to have to do this as a necessity, I would say.
And Matthew, I think I'll come to you. This is one of the audience questions. We've talked about Euro NCAP, but a lot of the crashes we see around the world are in low and middle income countries. How are we going to see the benefits of technology proliferate to these areas where the crashes happen in these lower and middle income countries?
Well, there is an organisation called Global NCAP, believe it or not, which is a sort of a voluntary body that sort of connects all the different NCAPs around the world together. And there are many of us. There are two in North America, one run by the insurance industry, one run by the government. There's one in South America, there's a Latin NCAP. There's a ASEAN NCAP, there's an Australian and New Zealand NCAP. So lots of NCAPs around the world, one in Japan, one in Korea. And there has been a lot of effort from these organisations working together to cover the emerging markets. So there's been recent moves towards getting an Indian NCAP up and running. And the good thing is that you create tension, because whilst that market might be developing, might not have the same level of vehicles or the same level of technology, it's very clear what they can aspire to. So it's very, very clear, because we share the knowledge to say this is the best car in Europe, and it might be a small car, might be an affordable car, but we can show different markets, whether that's India or Africa or South Asia. And that creates the competition in the market. And we've seen that. We've seen vehicle manufacturers move very, very quickly.
Yes.
So, you know, we've started off and seen some tests, and these vehicles have performed poorly, maybe not even with standard fit airbags. We've really put some pressure on and gone out into the media, because the media is really our friend there, telling the consumer, by the way, you think you've got a good car, but actually in North America or in Europe, you can have a vehicle like this. And it makes the vehicle manufacturers change.
Yes.
So we've been very successful with that.
Yeah, that's so important, isn't it? To make sure that you can't get away with producing a lesser vehicle in terms of safety technologies for different markets. Raj, one of the technologies we haven't yet mentioned today, but is a common feature in many of the vehicles that the audience and I dare say some of you drive as well, is eCall. And what does that deliver in terms of as a safety technology?
Oh, it's fantastic. I think, yeah, nearly all cars, new cars at least, are equipped with eCall. I think for the audience that doesn't know what it is, effectively, if you get yourself into an accident, it could either be through a button or through an automated call to the emergency services to locate where you are and to then direct the appropriate emergency service to your vehicle. Because if you get into an accident, there are going to be situations where you don't have the ability to make a phone call to contact somebody. So having the eCall system automated in the back end is very useful. And I think some of the things that we're seeing through the connected service capability is that currently when emergency services go out, they don't know what's gone wrong with the accident. They don't know what's happened. They don't know if it was a small shunt. They don't know if it's a severe accident. They don't know if it's a rollover. They've got no information. All they know has been an accident. But there's a lot of data that comes off a vehicle in an accident. We can know a lot about the road conditions. We can use map data as well. And then we can enable that emergency service to really direct the right level of competence to that injury.
Yes.
Yeah, hopefully it's just an injury. But you can send the right level of competence there. I think there was some data, and you might have to correct me on this one, Nick, you probably better read on this one, but I think there was some data that said that if they can save 10 minutes, they can save a life. Yeah. And so I think through the eCall services as it is today, it's a good service. We can now start adding further layers onto that can really then save lives.
Yeah.
And that's actually part of our Euro NCAP roadmap, something we call decall.
Decall, yes.
Which is adding that extra veneer, as you said, the triaging of how many people are in this vehicle, are they responding, what are their ages, where are they sitting, and know a lot more about the severity of the collision, which means you can triage much more accurately and much more efficiently.
And send the right resource, and it really does improve that post-crash element, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm sad to say that has flown by. We are at our hour, and time has beaten us here at Upper Hayford. But it's been a fantastically rich conversation. We're tremendously indebted to the fantastic panellists who've shared their insights with us, and of course to the team at Thatcham for hosting us at this great facility. And Matthew, thank you for booking the weather. It's very kind. And of course, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to join us here and participate in the discussion. The next in the series will be of these RoadSafe webinars will be on connected technologies and safe speeds, and that will be hosted at Genoptic in just 8 days' time. We'll be looking at how innovations are helping us to track, manage and enforce safe speeds on our roads. And I'll again be joined by a fantastic panel for another super discussion on that technology. I hope to see you there, but for now, thanks very much for watching. Stay safe on the roads, and goodbye.